Andre Wilson checked his watch as he walked up to the gleaming glass building of Pinnacle Technologies. He had about 10 minutes to spare before his meeting, which was plenty of time. The morning sun reflected off the windows, almost making him squint. He straightened his navy blue polo shirt and adjusted the collar. It wasn't his usual business attire, but he had come straight from a mentoring session at the community center, where he'd been speaking to high school students about careers in tech. As the founder and CEO of Skyline Innovations, Andre had built his company from nothing into a tech powerhouse worth billions. What had started in his garage 12 years ago now employed over 2,000 people and had offices in 4 countries. Today's meeting with Pinnacle Technologies was potentially huge for both companies, a partnership that could revolutionize the industry. Andre pushed through the revolving doors and entered the cool, air-conditioned lobby. The space was minimalist, all white marble and clean lines. A large reception desk stood in the center, staffed by a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair who was typing away at her computer. Behind her, the company logo glowed on the wall. "Good morning," Andre said with a smile as he approached the desk. The woman, her nameplate read Heather Brooks, barely looked up from her screen. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, her tone flat and uninterested. "Yes, I'm here to see Richard Taylor. I'm a bit early, but name?" Heather cut him off, still not making eye contact. "Andre Wilson," he replied, maintaining his smile despite her rudeness. Heather glanced at her computer screen and frowned. "I don't see any Andre Wilson on Mr. Taylor's calendar." "The meeting is at 10:30. I'm the CEO of Skyline Innovations," Andre explained patiently. Now Heather looked up, her eyes quickly scanning him from head to toe, taking in his casual polo shirt and jeans. A small smirk appeared on her face. "Right, and I'm the Queen of England." Andre blinked, taken aback. "Excuse me?" "Look," she said with an exaggerated sigh. "Mr. Taylor is the chief operating officer of a multi-million-dollar company. He doesn't take meetings with people who walk in off the street." She gestured toward the exit. "The waiting area is for actual clients. Why don't you go away and call to make a proper appointment, and maybe dress the part next time?" Andre stood still, processing what was happening. In all his years of business, he'd faced plenty of challenges and prejudice, but this was particularly blatant. He'd been dismissed simply because he didn't fit this receptionist's image of what a CEO should look like. "I understand there might be confusion," Andre said calmly, "but I assure you I have a meeting with Richard. Perhaps you could call his assistant to confirm." Heather rolled her eyes. "Look, I don't have time for this. There's no Andre Wilson on the schedule, and Mr. Taylor doesn't meet with people dressed like they're heading to a backyard barbecue. Now, if you don't leave, I'll have to call security." Andre took a deep breath. He could feel the eyes of other people in the lobby on him. A young man waiting on one of the sleek couches was watching the exchange with obvious discomfort. 2 employees by the elevator were whispering to each other while glancing in his direction. "I'd like to speak to your manager," Andre said, his voice level but firm. "My manager is in a meeting," Heather replied with a dismissive wave. "Just go away and stop wasting my time." Just as Andre was about to respond, the elevator doors opened, and a tall man in an expensive suit stepped out. He was engrossed in conversation with a younger colleague, but as he glanced toward the reception desk, he stopped mid-sentence. His eyes widened in recognition. "Mr. Wilson?" the man called out, quickly striding across the lobby. "Andre Wilson?" Heather's head snapped up. The man approached with an outstretched hand and a broad smile. "I thought that was you. I'm Daniel Reed, VP of Operations. We weren't expecting you for another—" He checked his watch. 15 minutes or so. Richard is just wrapping up a call." Andre shook Daniel's hand. "Nice to meet you, Daniel. I was just explaining to your receptionist that I had an appointment, but it seems there's been some confusion." Daniel glanced at Heather, whose face had gone pale. "Confusion? There shouldn't be any confusion. This meeting has been on the calendar for weeks." He turned to Heather with a puzzled expression. "Heather, Mr. Wilson is the CEO of Skyline Innovations. He's here for the 10:30 meeting with the executive team." Heather's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. The system? He's not on the calendar," she stammered. Daniel frowned. "That's impossible." "Check again." With shaking hands, Heather typed something and stared at her screen. "Oh," she said in a small voice. "It's under A. Wilson Skyline. I didn't see it before." "I see," Daniel said, his voice cool. He turned back to Andre with an apologetic smile. I'm terribly sorry for any misunderstanding, Mr. Wilson. We're absolutely thrilled to have you here today. The entire executive team has been looking forward to this meeting. The young colleague who had been standing slightly behind Daniel stepped forward. Mr. Wilson, I'm Katie Chen, Daniel's assistant. I've read all about your work at Skyline. Your community outreach programs are inspiring, especially the coding academies you've established in underserved neighborhoods. Andre smiled at Katie. Thank you. That's actually where I was this morning, speaking to students at Eastside High about careers in technology. Daniel nodded appreciatively. That explains the casual attire. I think it's wonderful that you make time for community engagement, despite running a billion-dollar company. From the corner of his eye, Andre could see Heather shrinking further into her chair, her face now bright red. Let me take you up to the conference room, Daniel said. The team will be so excited to meet you. We've prepared quite a presentation on how this partnership could benefit both our companies. As they walked toward the elevator, Andre could hear Daniel speaking quietly but firmly to Heather. We'll discuss this later. Inside the elevator, Daniel pressed the button for the top floor. Again, Mr. Wilson, I can't apologize enough for that. Unfortunate welcome. That's not how we do business at Pinnacle. Andre nodded but remained quiet. The truth was, it wasn't the first time something like this had happened, and it probably wouldn't be the last. As a black man in the tech industry, he'd learned to pick his battles. Right now, he was more focused on evaluating whether Pinnacle Technologies was the right partner for his company. The elevator doors opened to reveal a spacious reception area with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of the city. Unlike the lobby downstairs, this space felt warm and inviting, with comfortable furniture and tasteful artwork on the walls. Our conference room is just this way, Daniel said, leading Andre down a hallway lined with glass-walled offices. Richard just texted that the team is assembled and ready whenever you are. As they walked, people looked up from their desks, many doing double takes when they recognized Andre. A few waved or nodded respectfully. Your company has been growing impressively, Andre commented. I've been following your quarterly reports, Daniel beamed. Thank you. Though we're still nowhere near Skyline's level. Your innovation in cloud security solutions has been game-changing for the industry. They reached a large conference room where about a dozen people were seated around a long table. When Andre entered, they all stood up. A distinguished-looking man with salt and pepper hair stepped forward. Mr. Wilson, I'm Richard Taylor. It's an honor to finally meet you in person. He shook Andre's hand firmly. We're incredibly excited about the possibility of partnering with Skyline. Andre smiled as he shook Richard's hand. Likewise. I've been impressed with what I've seen from Pinnacle. I think there could be real synergy between our companies. As introductions continued around the table, Andre maintained his professional demeanor. But in the back of his mind, he couldn't help replaying the incident downstairs. He'd learned long ago to never make business decisions based on emotion, but he also believed that a company's culture was reflected in every employee's behavior. From the CEO to the front desk, what had happened in the lobby wouldn't be the deciding factor in his decision about the partnership, but it certainly gave him something to think about. As the meeting began and Pinnacle's team launched into their presentation, Andre listened carefully, evaluating not just the business proposition, but also the values and culture of the company he was considering tying his own to. The projected partnership numbers looked good on screen, but Andre knew that successful business relationships depended on more than just promising financials. They required mutual respect at every level, and that was something he wasn't yet convinced Pinnacle could offer. The conference room buzzed with energy as Pinnacle's team launched into their presentation. Richard Taylor stood at the front, confidently clicking through slides filled with impressive projections and colorful graphs. Andre Wilson sat quietly, his hands folded on the table, taking it all in. As you can see, Mr. Wilson, Richard said, gesturing to a chart showing an upward trajectory. Our combined technologies would create a security solution unlike anything currently on the market. Andre nodded, asking thoughtful questions at appropriate moments. On the surface, he appeared fully engaged, but part of his mind kept drifting back to the lobby incident. He had trained himself over the years to compartmentalize, to not let slights and microaggressions affect his business judgment. But something about this particular encounter felt different. We're especially excited about integrating your AI security protocols with our cloud infrastructure, continued Richard. Our tech team believes the compatibility is nearly perfect. Daniel Reed, who had rescued Andre from the lobby situation, chimed in. Pinnacle has been searching for exactly what Skyline has developed. It's like our companies were made to work together. Around the table, heads nodded in agreement. The excitement was palpable. Pinnacle needed this deal. Rumors had been circulating in the industry about their financial troubles. Their last product launch had underperformed, and their stock had taken a hit. A partnership with Skyline could be their salvation. Andre knew all this, of course. His team had prepared a thorough brief on Pinnacle's situation. What the people in this room didn't know was that Skyline had also been in preliminary talks with Nova Systems, Pinnacle's biggest competitor. Your team has put together an impressive proposal, Andre said as the presentation concluded. I appreciate the thoroughness, Richard beamed. We've been working on it for weeks. We want to show Skyline how serious we are about this partnership. I can see that, Andre replied with a slight smile. There are a few technical aspects I'd like my team to review in more detail, but overall I see the potential. The relief in the room was almost tangible. Several executives exchanged subtle glances and small smiles. That's wonderful to hear, Richard said. We're ready to move forward at whatever pace works for you. I'll need a few days to consult with my board, Andre replied. I never make decisions of this magnitude without their input. Of course, Richard nodded enthusiastically. Completely understandable. After the presentation, Richard suggested a tour of their development floor. I'd love to show you where the magic happens, he said with a grin. As they walked through Pinnacle's offices, Andre noted the state-of-the-art equipment, the open workspace design, and the diverse team of developers. It was impressive, no doubt about it. Pinnacle might be struggling financially, but they had talent. Your facilities are excellent, Andre commented as they returned to the executive floor. We believe in investing in our people and their workspace, Richard replied proudly. Happy developers create better products. Andre nodded in agreement. That philosophy extends to everyone in the company, I hope. Richard looked slightly confused. Of course. Every employee is valued at Pinnacle. Andre chose not to elaborate. Instead, he checked his watch. I should be heading back to my office. I have another meeting at 1. Let me walk you out, Daniel offered. As they rode the elevator down, Daniel cleared his throat. Mr. Wilson, I want to apologize again for the misunderstanding earlier. I've already spoken with HR about the incident. Andre raised an eyebrow. What exactly did you tell them? Daniel looked uncomfortable. That Heather failed to properly check the appointment system and was unprofessional to an important client. I see, Andre said quietly. And was that the full extent of the issue in your view? The elevator doors opened to the lobby. Heather was still at the reception desk, but she quickly looked away when she saw Andre and Daniel. Another woman was standing beside her, apparently training her on something on the computer. Mr. Wilson, Daniel began hesitantly, if there was something more to the interaction. It's not my place to tell you how to run your company, Andre interrupted gently. But in my experience, it's important to address the real problems, not just the symptoms. Daniel nodded slowly. I understand, he extended his hand. Thank you for coming today. We're very excited about the potential partnership. Andre shook his hand firmly. I'll be in touch by the end of the week with our decision. As Andre walked out of the building and toward his waiting car, his phone buzzed with a text from his assistant, Lena. How did it go? Andre typed back, the tech compatibility looks good. The culture fit is questionable. Let's talk when I get back. In the car, Andre loosened his collar and leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. The presentation had been solid. The numbers made sense. On paper, a partnership with Pinnacle was logical, but Andre hadn't built Skyline by making decisions purely on paper. He believed that a company's culture flowed from the top down, affecting every interaction, every product, every decision. What he'd experienced in the lobby wasn't just about one receptionist's behavior. It reflected something deeper. Where to, sir? His driver asked. Back to the office, please, Thomas. And can you call Lena? Tell her to set up a meeting with the board for tomorrow morning. And I'd like her to pull the latest on Nova Systems, the files we were reviewing last week. Right away, sir. As the car pulled into traffic, Andre took out his tablet and began making notes. By the time they reached Skyline's headquarters, a modern building with Skyline innovations displayed proudly on its glass facade, he had outlined two possible paths forward. Andre spent the rest of the afternoon in back-to-back meetings, but his mind kept returning to the Pinnacle proposal. At 6, when most of the staff had gone home, he called Lena into his office. "You've been thinking hard about something all day," she observed, setting a cup of tea on his desk. "I can practically see the gears turning." Andre smiled. Lena had been with him almost since the beginning. She knew him better than most. "I'm weighing our options with Pinnacle versus Nova. And," she prompted, "Pinnacle's technology aligns better with ours. The integration would be smoother, less costly. But," Andre sighed, "but I'm concerned about their company culture. The way they handled the situation this morning was telling." Lena nodded thoughtfully. "You always say that partners reflect on us. That who we choose to work with says something about who we are." "Exactly." Andre took a sip of his tea. "Nova would be a more challenging technical integration, but their values align more closely with ours. You know," Lena said carefully, "there is a third option. One you've mentioned before but haven't seriously considered." Andre looked up, intrigued. "Which is?" "Acquisition rather than partnership." Lena pulled up some figures on her tablet and passed it to him. "We have the capital. Pinnacle's stock is down. The timing could be right." Andre studied the numbers, a slow smile spreading across his face. "An acquisition would give us control over their technology without tying our reputation to their current leadership and culture. And," Lena added, "it would give you the opportunity to address any cultural issues directly." Andre leaned back in his chair, considering the possibility. It was bold, aggressive even, but it made strategic sense. Skyline could use Pinnacle's technology while reshaping the company and Skyline's image. "Get me everything you can on their financial situation," he said finally. "Stock performance, debt, assets, everything. And set up a call with our legal team for first thing tomorrow." Lena nodded, already making notes. "And the board meeting?" "Still on. But let's shift the focus. Rather than discussing a partnership with Pinnacle versus Nova, we'll be considering an acquisition." Later that night, in his downtown apartment, Andre stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out at the city lights. His phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Daniel Reed at Pinnacle, following up on their meeting with additional data they'd discussed. The email was cordial, professional, ending with, "We're very excited about the potential of working with Skyline and are ready to move forward as soon as you are." Andre composed a polite response, thanking Daniel for the information and reiterating that he'd be in touch. By the end of the week, after consulting with his board, what Daniel didn't know, what no one at Pinnacle knew, was that Andre's decision had already crystallized. He wouldn't be proposing a partnership with either Pinnacle or Nova to his board tomorrow. Instead, he would be outlining a plan to acquire Pinnacle Technologies outright. The receptionist's dismissive "go away" had indeed changed everything, just not in the way anyone at Pinnacle could have anticipated. Andre wasn't walking away. He was walking in and taking over. As he turned from the window, Andre's phone rang. It was his mother. "How was your day?" she asked after they exchanged greetings. Andre smiled. "Interesting. Very interesting." "That sounds cryptic," she laughed. "Are you going to tell me, or do I have to guess?" "Let's just say I encountered a familiar situation, and it's leading to an unexpected opportunity." His mother was quiet for a moment. "Someone underestimated you again, didn't they?" "You could say that," she chuckled softly. "Well, they'll learn. They always do." After hanging up, Andre returned to his desk where spreadsheets and projections for the acquisition were displayed on his laptop. Tomorrow would be a big day, the first step in a move that would reshape not just Pinnacle, but potentially the entire industry. And somewhere in that gleaming building across town, a receptionist named Heather had no idea that her actions that morning had set it all in motion. The Skyline boardroom fell silent as Andre finished outlining his acquisition plan. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the surprised faces of his board members. He stood confidently at the head of the table, having just presented the most aggressive move in the company's history. "Let me get this straight," said Vivian Chen, head of the finance committee and one of Skyline's earliest investors. "Instead of partnering with Pinnacle or Nova, you want to acquire Pinnacle outright?" That's a massive shift from what we discussed last week. Andre nodded. It is, but circumstances have changed, and I believe this represents the best strategic option for Skyline's future. This would be our largest acquisition to date, noted Gregory Washington, another board member. The capital outlay alone is significant. The numbers support it, Andre replied, gesturing to the financial projections displayed on the large screen. Pinnacle's stock is undervalued right now. Their last product launch underperformed, but their core technology is solid, and it aligns perfectly with our security framework. What about Nova? Asked Vivian. We've been in talks with them for months. Nova remains a valuable potential partner, Andre acknowledged. But acquiring Pinnacle gives us immediate access to their client base and technology stack, plus it eliminates a competitor. The integration challenges would be substantial, but the long-term benefits outweigh the short-term costs. The board members exchanged glances. Andre had built Skyline from nothing into a tech powerhouse. His instincts had proven right time and again, but this was bold, even for him. What prompted this change in direction? Gregory asked, leaning forward in his chair. Just last week, you were advocating for a strategic partnership approach. Andre paused, considering how much to share. My meeting at Pinnacle yesterday gave me insights into their company that weren't apparent from our previous discussions. They're in a more vulnerable position than they're letting on, and their internal culture, he hesitated. Let's just say it could benefit from new leadership. Lena, who sat in the corner taking notes, caught his eye. She alone knew the full story of what had happened in Pinnacle's lobby. This feels rushed, said Vivian cautiously. Typically, we'd perform more extensive due diligence before considering an acquisition of this magnitude. I understand your concern, Andre replied. And I'm not asking for a final decision today. What I need is authorization to move forward with exploratory steps, having our legal team draw up preliminary paperwork, and allowing our financial analyst to do a deeper dive into Pinnacle's books. He looked around the room, making eye contact with each board member. If the additional information raises red flags, we can always pull back. But I believe we need to move quickly. Once word gets out that Pinnacle is struggling, other potential buyers might enter the picture. The discussion continued for another hour, with board members raising questions and concerns. Andre addressed each one patiently, his confidence never wavering. By the end, even the most cautious members were leaning toward approval. Let's put it to a vote, Gregory suggested finally. All in favor of authorizing the exploratory steps for a potential acquisition of Pinnacle Technologies, raise your hand. One by one, hands went up around the table. The vote was unanimous. Thank you for your trust, Andre said sincerely. I believe this will be a transformative move for Skyline. As the board members filed out, Vivian lingered behind. There's something you're not telling us, Andre, she said quietly. I've known you too long not to notice. Andre smiled slightly. Let's just say I saw something at Pinnacle that convinced me they need a complete overhaul, not just a partnership. Vivian studied his face. Well, I trust your judgment. You've never steered us wrong before. After she left, Lena approached with a stack of notes. That went well, she observed. Better than expected, Andre agreed. Now the real work begins. Over the next 3 days, Skyline's team worked around the clock analyzing Pinnacle's financials, legal position, and market value. By Friday morning, they had compiled a comprehensive report that confirmed Andre's initial assessment. Pinnacle was ripe for acquisition. Meanwhile, Richard Taylor from Pinnacle had called twice and sent several emails, eager to hear Skyline's decision about the partnership. Andre had his assistant provide polite but non-committal responses, saying he was still consulting with his board. On Friday afternoon, Andre called his executive team together. The mood in the room was electric as he laid out the acquisition strategy. We'll make a public offer on Monday morning, he explained. Our financial team believes that offering a 15% premium over their current stock price will be attractive to shareholders, while still representing excellent value for us. What about their leadership team? Asked Tanya Rodriguez, Skyline's chief operating officer. That's where this gets tricky, Andre admitted. We want their technical talent, but there will need to be significant changes at the top. Richard Taylor and his executive team will likely resist, but given Pinnacle's financial situation, the board and shareholders will find our offer difficult to refuse. And if they do refuse? Tanya pressed. Andre smiled. Then we go to Plan B. We take our offer directly to their major shareholders. Our analysis shows that 3 institutional investors control nearly 40% of Pinnacle's stock. 2 of them have already expressed concern about the company's direction. The meeting continued as they refined the strategy, addressing potential obstacles and contingencies. By the end, the team was aligned and ready to execute. As everyone was leaving, Andre asked his chief technology officer, Ben Lee, to stay behind. "I need you to do something specific," Andre said once they were alone. "I want a complete cultural assessment of Pinnacle's organization. Talk to former employees, review their HR policies, check their diversity statistics. I need to understand what we're walking into." Ben looked surprised. "That's not our usual acquisition approach. Typically, we focus on their technology and financials. This acquisition is different," Andre explained. "I witnessed something at Pinnacle that suggests deeper cultural issues. If we're going to integrate their team successfully, we need to know what we're dealing with." Ben nodded slowly. "I'll get on it." "Should I prioritize any particular aspects?" Andre thought for a moment. "Look at how they handle inclusion and diversity. Check their promotion patterns, pay equity, and how they respond to complaints. And Ben," he added, "keep this between us for now." That evening, Andre stayed late in his office reviewing the final acquisition proposal. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Dinner on Sunday? Your sister will be in town." He smiled and replied affirmatively, then returned to the documents. Just as he was about to leave, his private line rang. The caller ID showed Richard Taylor's number. Andre hesitated, then answered. "Richard, what can I do for you at this hour?" "Andre, I hope I'm not disturbing you." Richard's voice had an edge of anxiety. "We haven't heard your decision about the partnership, and our board is getting restless. I was hoping for an update." "I understand," Andre replied calmly. "My team and I have been carefully evaluating the proposal. It's a significant decision for Skyline." Of course," Richard said quickly. "But we were under the impression you'd have an answer by the end of the week." "And you will," Andre assured him. "I'll have a formal response for you on Monday morning." "Monday?" Richard couldn't hide his disappointment. "Is there any chance we could move that up?" "Our quarterly report is due next week, and the board was hoping to include news of the partnership." "I'm afraid Monday is the earliest I can commit to," Andre said firmly. "These things take time, Richard." After hanging up, Andre gazed out at the city skyline. Richard had no idea what was coming. By this time on Monday, the business world would be buzzing with news of Skyline's takeover bid, and Richard would be fighting for his corporate life. Part of Andre felt a twinge of sympathy. Richard himself had been nothing but professional. But leadership wasn't just about being personally courteous. It was about creating and maintaining a culture of respect throughout an organization. The incident with the receptionist wasn't just about one person's behavior. It reflected Pinnacle's culture, which ultimately was Richard's responsibility. As Andre packed up his things and headed for the elevator, he thought about how a single interaction had changed the trajectory of 2 companies. The receptionist's dismissive "go away" had inadvertently set in motion events that would reshape the industry landscape. Sometimes, Andre murmured to himself as he stepped into the empty elevator, people have no idea of the power of their words. By the time the doors opened on the ground floor, his mind had already shifted to Monday's announcement and the seismic changes it would bring. Monday morning arrived with a clear sky and a biting chill in the air. Andre Wilson walked into Skyline's headquarters at 6:30 a.m., hours before his usual arrival time. The security guard looked up in surprise. "Early start today, Mr. Wilson?" Andre nodded with a slight smile. "Big day, George. Very big day." In his office, Andre found Lena already working, a cup of coffee in her hand and another waiting on his desk. "The press release is ready," she said without preamble. "Legal approved the final version last night. It goes out at 8 a.m. just before the markets open." "And the offer to Pinnacle's board?" "Being delivered by courier at 7:30. Our legal team will follow up with electronic copies to each board member simultaneously." Andre took a sip of his coffee. "Have you heard from Ben?" Yes, Lena handed him a folder. He completed the cultural assessment over the weekend. "It's enlightening." Andre opened the folder and began reading. Ben had been thorough, interviewing former Pinnacle employees and analyzing company data. The picture that emerged wasn't pretty. Pinnacle had a history of promoting primarily white males to leadership positions, despite having a diverse workforce at lower levels. Complaints about discrimination had been routinely buried or dismissed. And the receptionist incident wasn't isolated. Several former employees reported similar experiences. "Just as I suspected," Andre murmured, closing the folder. "This goes beyond a single employee's behavior." By 7:45, Skyline's executive team had gathered in the conference room. The energy was tense but focused as they reviewed the day's timeline one last time. "Once the announcement goes public, all hell will break loose," Andre warned. "Pinnacle's leadership will likely reach out immediately. Remember, stick to the approved talking points. This is a business decision based on strategic alignment and shareholder value." At precisely 8:01 a.m., the press release went out. "Skyline Innovations announces offer to acquire Pinnacle Technologies," the headline read. Financial details followed, along with quotes from Andre about the strategic benefits of combining the two companies' technologies. Within minutes, Andre's phone lit up with a call from Richard Taylor. He let it go to voicemail. Now wasn't the time for conversation. Richard would be reacting emotionally, and Andre needed him to process the situation first. News of the offer spread like wildfire through the financial world. Business channels interrupted their morning programming to report on the unexpected development. Pinnacle's stock jumped 17% in the first hour of trading as investors responded to Skyline's generous offer. "Their shareholders are happy," observed Tanya Rodriguez, watching the stock ticker on the conference room screen. "Of course they are," Andre replied. "We're offering a significant premium over market value. For many of them, this is the exit opportunity they've been waiting for." By noon, Pinnacle had issued a brief statement. "Pinnacle Technologies' board of directors will review Skyline Innovations' unsolicited offer and respond in due course. No action is required by Pinnacle shareholders at this time. Standard defensive language," noted Skyline's legal counsel. "They're buying time while they scramble to respond." Andre nodded. "They'll call an emergency board meeting, probably for this afternoon. Richard will argue against the takeover, but the financial reality will be hard to ignore." Throughout the day, Andre fielded calls from journalists, major shareholders, and industry analysts. To each he calmly explained the strategic rationale behind the acquisition offer. Not once did he mention the receptionist incident or his concerns about Pinnacle's culture. Those were factors in his decision, but they weren't part of the public narrative. At 3:15 p.m., Lena knocked on his office door. "Richard Taylor is in the lobby," she said. "He doesn't have an appointment, but he's insisting on seeing you." Andre raised an eyebrow. "That's unexpected. He's supposed to be in an emergency board meeting. Should I send him away?" Lena asked, a hint of irony in her voice. Andre smiled slightly at the parallel. "No, I'll see him. Send him up, but stay close. I may need you." A few minutes later, Richard Taylor stormed into Andre's office, his face flushed and his normally perfect tie slightly askew. "What the hell is this about?" he demanded, waving a copy of the press release. "We were discussing a partnership last week, and now you're trying to swallow us whole? Without even the courtesy of a conversation first?" Andre remained seated, his demeanor calm. "Have a seat, Richard. I don't want to sit down. I want an explanation." "I understand you're upset," Andre said evenly. This must feel like it came out of nowhere. "But from a business perspective, this acquisition makes more sense than a partnership for both our companies." Richard paced in front of the desk. "You could have called me. We could have discussed this like professionals. Would that have changed the outcome?" Andre asked. "Would you have voluntarily recommended to your board that Pinnacle be acquired?" Richard stopped pacing. "Of course not, but then the result would have been the same, just with more delay and drama." "Business isn't personal, Richard." Richard stared at him. "Isn't it? Because this feels very personal." Andre met his gaze steadily. "My offer's fair, generous even. Your shareholders know it, which is why your stock is up nearly 20% today. The market has spoken." "Our board hasn't," Richard countered, "and we won't be bullied into a hasty decision." "Take all the time you need," Andre replied. "But I've already spoken with 3 of your largest institutional investors. They're receptive to the offer." Richard's face paled slightly. He sank into the chair across from Andre. "This isn't just about business, is it? Something happened. Something changed between our meeting last week and now." Andre remained silent for a moment, considering his response. "Let's just say I got a clearer picture of Pinnacle's company culture than I expected during my visit." Recognition dawned in Richard's eyes. The lobby incident? Daniel mentioned there was some confusion with our receptionist. He laughed incredulously. You're telling me you're making a multi-billion-dollar acquisition decision based on a rude receptionist? No, Andre said firmly. I'm making a business decision based on thorough analysis of Pinnacle's technology, market position, and potential synergies with Skyline. But the incident did prompt me to look more closely at your company culture. He slid Ben's report across the desk, and what I found was concerning. Richard glanced at the folder but didn't open it. Every company has HR issues. True. But how those issues are addressed speaks volumes about leadership and values. Andre leaned forward. The receptionist who told me to go away wasn't the problem, Richard. She was a symptom of a larger issue that starts at the top. Richard was quiet for a long moment. So what happens now? Now your board reviews our offer. They'll likely hire outside advisors to evaluate it, which is standard procedure. Given Pinnacle's financial situation and the premium we're offering, I believe they'll ultimately recommend acceptance. And if they don't, Andre shrugged. Then we go to Plan B, a direct appeal to your shareholders. But that would be messier for everyone involved. Richard stood up slowly. I built Pinnacle from nothing. 18 years of my life. I know, Andre said, his tone softening slightly. That's why our offer includes a role for you on Skyline's board if you want it. Your experience is valuable. Richard straightened his tie, regaining some of his composure. This isn't over, Andre. Actually, it is. Andre replied calmly. The only question now is how smoothly the transition happens. After Richard left, Lena came in with an update. Pinnacle's board meeting has been rescheduled for 5 p.m. And 3 more of their major shareholders have reached out, asking for calls with you. Andre nodded. Set those up for tomorrow. And let's schedule a company-wide meeting for our staff first thing in the morning. They should hear about this directly from me, not just from the news. As evening fell, Andre stood by his office window watching the city lights come on. His phone buzzed with a text from Ben Lee. Just got word from a contact at Pinnacle. Their board is leaning toward accepting the offer, contingent on due diligence. Richard is fighting it, but he's outnumbered. Andre wasn't surprised. The financial logic was too compelling to ignore. By this time next month, Pinnacle would likely be part of Skyline. His thoughts drifted to the receptionist who had unwittingly set these events in motion. Heather Brooks. He had learned her full name from Ben's report. She had no idea that her dismissive words to a man she'd prejudged had triggered a chain reaction that would reshape 2 companies and affect thousands of employees. Small actions can have enormous consequences. Andre murmured to himself as he gathered his things to head home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as the acquisition process moved forward. But tonight he would allow himself a moment of satisfaction. Not because of revenge, and he was too experienced a businessman to make decisions based on personal slights, but because he had turned an unpleasant encounter into an opportunity that would ultimately benefit both his company and, ironically, the very culture that had produced that encounter in the first place. Sometimes, the best response to go away was to come in and take charge. 6 months had passed since the announcement of Skyline's acquisition of Pinnacle Technologies. The spring air was warm and fragrant as Andre Wilson walked through the doors of what had once been Pinnacle's headquarters. The building now bore the Skyline logo, and the reception area had been completely redesigned, open, welcoming, with comfortable seating and natural light flooding through expanded windows. A young man at the reception desk looked up with a smile. Good morning, Mr. Wilson. The team is ready for you in the main conference room. Thanks, Miguel, Andre replied. He had made it a point to learn the names of all frontline staff, especially receptionists and security personnel. It was a small gesture that reflected a larger philosophy. Everyone deserved respect regardless of their position. As Andre rode the elevator to the top floor, he reflected on the whirlwind of the past 6 months. Pinnacle's board had accepted Skyline's offer after 2 weeks of negotiations and due diligence. Richard Taylor had fought the acquisition until the end, but the financial reality had been impossible to ignore. Pinnacle had been bleeding cash, and their next product launch was still months away. Skyline's offer had been a lifeline that the majority of shareholders had eagerly grasped. The transition hadn't been easy. Merging two tech companies never was. There had been redundancies to address, systems to integrate, and most challenging of all, cultures to align. Andre had put Tanya Rodriguez in charge of the integration process, with a specific mandate to address the cultural issues identified in Ben's report. The elevator doors opened onto a busy floor of developers and project managers working in collaborative spaces. Many looked up and nodded or waved as Andre passed. He had been a regular presence during the transition, making himself visible and accessible to former Pinnacle employees who had been uncertain about their future under new leadership. In the conference room, a team of executives, a mix of original Skyline leaders and former Pinnacle talent, waited for the quarterly review meeting. Andre had personally selected which Pinnacle leaders to retain, looking beyond job titles to identify those who demonstrated the values he wanted in the combined company. "Let's start with the integration progress," Andre said after greetings were exchanged. Tanya brought up a dashboard on the large screen. "We're at 92% completion on system integration, which is ahead of schedule. The team has done exceptional work bringing the two platforms together." Andre nodded appreciatively. "And how are our people doing?" "That's been the bigger challenge, as expected," Tanya admitted. "But we're making real progress. The anonymous pulse surveys show employee satisfaction is up 12 points since last month. The cultural shifts are taking hold." "And the new initiatives?" Andre prompted. "The mentorship program has 67 participants now," Ben Lee reported. "We've paired experienced Skyline staff with former Pinnacle employees, focusing especially on creating advancement pathways for underrepresented groups." "Good," Andre said. "And what about the innovation lab?" This had been one of Andre's first decisions after the acquisition, converting an entire floor of the Pinnacle building into an innovation lab for developers from underserved communities. The program provided training, mentorship, and resources for aspiring tech professionals who might otherwise lack access to opportunities in the industry. "The first cohort graduates next month," Ben replied with a smile. 28 participants, and we've already offered full-time positions to 23 of them." The meeting continued with detailed reports on various aspects of the merged company. The numbers were impressive. The combined technology stack had allowed them to develop security solutions more robust than either company could have created alone. Market share was up, and a major new product launch was scheduled for the following quarter. "Before we wrap up," Andre said as the meeting was concluding, "I want to share something." He pulled up an email on the screen. This came in yesterday from one of our largest clients. They specifically mention how seamless their experience has been through the acquisition, and how the new security features have exceeded their expectations. Smiles broke out around the table. It was validation of what they'd all been working toward. "This success belongs to everyone in this room and beyond," Andre said. "The integration teams, the developers, the sales staff, everyone who's put in countless hours to make this work." After the meeting, Andre took a walking tour of the building with Tanya, stopping to chat with employees along the way. On the innovation lab floor, they observed a group of young developers working on a project, their enthusiasm palpable. "Remember when we first announced the acquisition?" Tanya asked as they watched. "People thought you were crazy to take on Pinnacle's problems along with their technology." Andre smiled. "Sometimes the best opportunities come disguised as problems." "Speaking of which," Tanya said hesitantly, "there's something you should know." "I wasn't going to bring it up in the meeting. What is it?" "It's about Heather Brooks." Andre stopped walking. The name immediately brought back the memory of that day in Pinnacle's lobby, the dismissive go away that had inadvertently changed the trajectory of two companies. "What about her?" he asked. "She's applied for a position in our customer support division. Apparently she was let go during the initial restructuring and has been struggling to find work. She didn't list her previous role at Pinnacle on her application, but HR recognized her name during the background check." Andre was silent for a moment, processing this information. "Has she been interviewed yet?" "No," Tanya replied. Given the history, HR flagged it for executive review. Andre resumed walking, his thoughts turning over the situation. "Set up an interview for her." Tanya looked surprised. "You want to interview her personally?" "No, that would be inappropriate. Have the regular team interview her, based solely on her qualifications for the position. But I'd like to speak with her briefly afterward, regardless of the outcome." 2 days later, Andre sat in a small conference room, waiting. The door opened and Heather Brooks walked in, stopping short when she recognized him. "Mr. Wilson," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her confident demeanor from their first encounter was gone, replaced by nervous uncertainty. "Ms. Brooks," Andre replied, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Please, have a seat." She sat down stiffly, hands clasped tightly in her lap. I didn't expect to see you." "I imagine not." Andre studied her for a moment. She looked different, less polished, more worn down by life's challenges. "The interview team tells me you did well today. They believe you have the skills for the customer support position." "They do?" Hope flickered across her face, quickly replaced by wariness. "But you're here to override their decision." "Actually, no," Andre said calmly. "The hiring decision isn't mine to make. That's up to the department manager." Confusion crossed her features. "Then why?" "I wanted to speak with you because I believe in closure, Ms. Brooks. Our first meeting was memorable." Heather's face flushed with embarrassment. "Mr. Wilson, I know an apology isn't enough, but I am truly sorry for how I treated you that day. I've had a lot of time to reflect on my behavior, and I'm ashamed." Andre nodded. "What have you learned from the experience?" She took a deep breath. "I learned that my assumptions and prejudices hurt not only you but ultimately myself and many others at Pinnacle. I've spent these months really examining why I acted that way, the biases I never acknowledged before. And if you were to join Skyline, I would bring that awareness with me," she said earnestly. "I know I can't change the past, but I can learn from it. I would treat every person who walks through those doors with the respect they deserve, regardless of how they're dressed or what they look like." Andre was quiet for a moment, considering her words. The new Skyline Pinnacle is built on a foundation of respect, innovation, and opportunity for all. Everyone deserves a second chance, Ms. Brooks, including you. Relief washed over her face. "Thank you, Mr. Wilson." "Don't thank me yet," he said with a slight smile. "The job will be challenging, and you'll be required to participate in our company-wide unconscious bias training." "I understand," she nodded quickly. "I'm ready to do whatever it takes." As Andre walked her out, they passed the innovation lab where young developers from diverse backgrounds were building the future of the company. "This is what we're creating here," Andre said, gesturing to the lab. "A place where talent matters more than appearance, where opportunities are open to all." Later that evening, as Andre drove home, he thought about the unexpected full circle of events. The woman who had told him to go away would now be part of the company he had built. It wasn't about revenge or even forgiveness, it was about transformation. Both companies had been transformed by their merger, and perhaps Heather had been transformed by her experience as well. His phone rang through the car's speaker system. It was his mother. "How was your day?" she asked after they exchanged greetings. Andre smiled. "Interesting. Very interesting." "That's what you said 6 months ago," she chuckled. "Right before you turned the industry upside down." "Well, today was different," Andre replied. "Today was about closing a circle." As he drove through the evening streets, Andre reflected on the power of moments, how a brief interaction could change the course of lives and companies. The receptionist who had judged him by his appearance had set in motion events that created opportunities for hundreds of people who might otherwise have been overlooked or dismissed. Sometimes, the most powerful response to go away wasn't destruction, it was creation.